All right, what is up? What is up? What is up? It is your boy RC Apologist, and this is Ask Reformed Christian Apologist number 87. All right, this is going to be an awesome, fun, and most importantly, creative episode because, well, it normally usually is, I would assume. But, anyways, going to explain something as a precaution before we begin. I am not feeling all right at the moment. I'm feeling a little under the weather. Woke up this morning feeling a little sick. It's probably due to the allergies or seasonal allergies because the whole thing's changing, and now I got this going on. But I felt a little drainage and had some fever and a few things in my chest this morning. But hopefully that gets resolved and we could just continue doing our thing. But yeah, so just going to be a bit of an advisory and a warning to some of you that are listening in. All right, now then, let's explain how this works. And now, if you look in your description, for those of you who are just tuning into us right now and watching, you'll see in the description there's 4 ways you could send in your question, which reminds me, I got to go check over to the other section. Let's see here. We have number 1, you can submit a question in the live chat. You see already there's been a forum dialogue kind of discussion going on between Jiftastic Ghost and this Destination Y figure. So if you want that, if you want to come in, you just, or not come in, but if you want to send in a question there, you can send your question there and we'll get to it. The next thing we have is, okay, hold up. DM me on the social media for the link. So if you got Twitter, if you got Discord, or whatever the social familiarities are, just get me with those, and I'll get you the link to come in here. That way I can also test and see if you are someone who, should be allowed in, because we get some people who will just simply be in here for the sake of trolling and such. And those people will not be tolerated or allowed in this if they're just going to do nothing but waste airtime for nothing more than mere childish insults and such. So, that being said, okay. All right. Then you have the Discord questions, which we have a section on our Discord, which is entitled Show Questions Only. You go there and you send in your questions, which we have our thing there where we have a few already there. So we'll be sure to get those out as soon as possible. Speaking of which, got to get the link out to some people who want to join, because I know that I saw a few messages before we started of people who were interested in participating and joining our wonderful occasion. All right, so we have that. All right. Oh, yeah, and then the final one, send to Facebook page in the comments on tonight's stream. Now, just simply search on there on the Facebook where it's Ask Reformed. Let's see, Ask RC Apologist. No, I guess I didn't title it that. Ask Reformed Christian Apologist, and our page is that. So you can go there, like it, and then check out each time that we upload something. We'll have, the link to the show as well as what questions do you have. So far, we don't have any on there. So if you have it and you would like to ask a question on there, then feel free to do so. We do all this expansion because we know there are some people, obviously, who don't have, a page and such to tune in to comment on. So we offer various different forms of communication to get us the questions, so that way that everyone has a fair voice in here. All right, that being said and done, let's go ahead and tune in. All right, now, of course, I see Abe's watching. Abe, if you check your Google Hangouts, I added you directly on there, so you should be able to come in from there if you want to tune in. But it's also very nice to see you as usual. Okay. Yeah, just let me get some Sprite. Man, tomorrow I'm telling you, I'm gonna go immediately to the store and get some Campbell's. I tell you what. Okay. Wait, what's this? Yep, Brad. Huh, unfamiliar with this. All right. Is Jesus blonde or ginger? I'm just asking. He's neither. He would have had, based on the reconstruction we had, he would have been uh, dark brown uh, hair or black, based on some of the other depictions of things we had at the time. I mean, there's a scientific reconstruction that was done of what Jesus would have most likely looked like compared to the kind of Jesus you normally see in the photos, where it's the long hair hippie version. Um, so, all right. And I see we got Jay who just joined up with us. Hello, Jay.
Hey, why can't I see the whole chat?
Hmm?
So why can't I see the whole thing? Like it's showing differently now.
What do you mean it's showing differently?
Am I the only one on with you?
At the moment, yes.
Oh, okay, cool. All right,
Yeah.
okay, all right. That's why I was a little confused. I'm like, well, all right, it worked. For some reason, when I tried to join through the link, like it kept on giving me an error for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been acting up that way, and at this point, I can't even bother messaging them anymore since they've already announced uh, that they're going to shut down Google Hangouts or Google Plus in a few. So we're gonna have to find another way to do the whole streaming, but I'm sure we'll find alternatives
Yeah, for
around it.
sure. Probably Skype would probably be one of the best ways momentarily.
Yeah, but yeah. So uh, yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Nep Brad or something. All right.
What was the
So
question?
he was asking if Jesus was ginger or blonde. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So Destination Y, I already answered his first question with the podcast episode we did responding to the article where he claims that Jesus or that the kingdom of heaven has a typology of the Davidic kingdom and therefore proves the Roman Catholic Church is the one true religion. We already responded and debunked that in its entirety. I don't know why he's uh, acting like this has never been answered before. So I left that in the uh, live chat in case anybody wants to take a look at that. And the link that gets you to it, as well as that in the description contains the link to his article where he tries to make the argument via this whole Davidic kingdom stuff. Um, His second question, though, says imagine if you were raptured to heaven in a vision and given a chance to ask Jesus what the perfect church government would look like in his absence. What do you think his answer would be? I don't know. I'm not going to entertain these kinds of hypotheticals of what Jesus would say in things that haven't been revealed because, again, that's going to be using the fallible human imagination to suggest things that we don't know or fully comprehend or understand. So I mean, I don't see where anywhere that there's the need to answer that particular question consistently as a Christian, because we just allow Jesus to be Jesus, and at this point, I can't give an answer as to what he would say because he hasn't revealed that information to us, and I don't know what Jesus would say. So, but I'll tell you this: it won't be the Catholic Church. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's see here. So what's this? Brad, one more question from here, and then we're gonna move into here. By the way, there's some of those. Like I see Ave and all them others. In fact, since he's already feeling like he's kind of wanting to be, because I see he's already responded to some of the things in here. Let's see. Destination Y has been added into the Hangout. So if he wants to be bold and brave like a man and come in, he's more than likely to come in to ask
bring
questions.
Bring it, my brother. RC is ready for you. No, I'm just kidding. No, but let me stop instigating.
Yeah. Well, I found out he won't debate anymore, even though he's already done one debate. So that's one thing. So because he thinks that it's a waste of time to like do a whole formal moderated debate and such. So I don't know what. I think he's just upset that he lost the one debate he was in with another guy and the conversations we've had in the past. At least that's just my assumptions and thoughts. But NetBrad asks another question. You branding right. What happened to introduction branding? I only see branding watermark. Huh? I don't get this question. You branding right. What happened to introduction branding? See, branding. I don't even know what that even means. So, all right. Until he can, I guess, explain that, I don't know how to really respond to that. Destination says, I would love to. I guess he's responding to what you was stating. He said, I would love to beat him up, dude, but I cannot for the moment. And I didn't lose against Preach and Sean. I won. You can see it for yourself. I dug a hole through him. I did watch the debate. You didn't dig a hole through him. He pretty much, challenged you and was victorious in that debate. I saw the whole thing. All right, so let's see here. All right, so I guess that'll be enough questions for the live chat. So let's go ahead and head on in here. So since Jay's the only one, we got Jay to ask the first question, and then we're going to, if anyone else decides to join in, feel free to do so. If y'all want the link, oh yeah, I forgot to get Religious Fanboy the link because he said that he wanted to join in. So he'll probably be up next if he quickly gets in. All right. So Jay, how are you doing, and what is your question?
Okay, I'm doing all right. Okay, so I'm freestyling. I didn't come in here prepared. I just kind of wanted to hang out, but since I just left off of a video about basically Christian or Christ mythicism, or whatever. What's your opinion on that? And what's your take on that? How do you feel about people like that?
Okay, so my thoughts on it is that I think it's theologically, historically wrong and inaccurate, and that I think that it's very problematic. I've done looking into the matter, and I've even debated a Jesus mythicist by the name of Godless Engineer. And what I've learned is that not everyone thinks the same way. There's always difference in approaches to it, from what I've gathered. But they mainly seem to be basic in the history thing. Now you have some that are actually engaging and using certain historical methods. Like you have, people like Richard Carey or Robert Price and these other people who are engaging in this much better than your village atheist type. But at the same time, they're still using a form of conspiracy theory type of understanding of going about these things, much in the same way that people go about the Mandela effect and the Bible translations. Like, oh, how can we trust which Bible's reliable? Because there's a whole conspiracy behind it, and then I have a bunch of other things that go into play. But it doesn't really dive into the actual issues or the actual facts of the matter. It just dabbles in, hypotheticals and liberal presuppositions that don't actually come into play. So when dealing with evidence, as I've done with Godless Engineer, there's usually a few things that happens as a result. Either A, um, they will think that the thing is like some sort of interpolation or corruption that was later done because they just don't like the idea of uh, something actually mentioning Jesus that's from an outside source. Or two, they try to indicate that it's talking about something else entirely, and that's where we get a lot of problems there. So I think ultimately Jesus mythicism is not a credible or good position one ought to hold to. And I think that if we were to be uh, consistent with historicity and reality, we would accept uh, the existence of Jesus. So,
I I think the further you climb down, like the history, like of the church, I think you get closer to at least believing that Jesus existed. Of course, there's a lot of people that don't believe that the Bible is a reliable source, but um, in fact, I think it is because of the history that's in it. You know, a lot of these teachings that are in the Bible, so like Paul and his epistles, um, they are something that is to be used in the future. You know what I mean? And so, like, if you're going to reach a conclusion to say that, hey, well, Jesus didn't exist, then, whatever, then why did Paul's epistles eventually lead to the church being formed? You know what I mean? Now, a lot of people can argue and debate over that too. I would like to think that Christ mythicists are hyper skeptical, so to speak, or for lack of better terms, because I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me from what I've heard. But or their rebuttal, and especially when you have people who was I watching? It was Mike Wanger, who wasn't trying to appeal to authority from a direct sense of Christians, but when he was defending it, he used atheist scholars, atheist historians, that didn't necessarily believe in God, but definitely believe that a lot of the sources are like that's been given throughout their research as reliable, and so it comes a point because I can see as a more of a normal person, just kind of listening to this and not necessarily want to engage in debate. You could just say I don't know, but if you do the research, you might find a more of a definitive answer. And I guess that's what a lot of these other atheists that are mythicists, I guess they do a lot of research, but I don't see how it leads them to that conclusion that Jesus didn't exist, from what I've heard. You know what I mean? But
right.
at the end of the day, I think it's an interesting topic. And thank you for answering that question. If you have anything else to address, about what I said, that's fine. But
Sure.
thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, no problem. So thank you for that. All right, let's well, I don't know if he's still back. Religious fanboy, are you there or feel? Okay, no, I'll take that he okay, I was about to go to Zulu, but Zulu immediately left. So I don't know if he wants to. I just mentioned that I brought him up, so if he wants to come back at some point, we'll feel free to answer any question that he may have.
Yeah, I was watching part of the. I'm reading the chat here. It says Mike Winger rocked it last night on NonSec, and Mike Winger seems like a cool cat, but he has a man-centered approach about him, up, not a top-down approach. Yeah, I didn't watch the full um, debate last night, meaning that I have not yet listened to the rebuttal. Haven't heard other rebuttals before that, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, from what it looked like, Mike Winger has some pretty. Oh, that's SJ. Oh, hey.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah. It was from what I watched though, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. It made me happy. I was smiling seeing him defend Christ, and he was so specific. I love that. I
Hmm.
love people who are very specific in debates,
Right.
because a lot of things can get lost in translation. So yeah. All right.
Yeah. All right. So let's actually go to some of the live chat right now. Let's see here. The introduction by Tulip is the T of Tulip is undeniable in two fronts. A, the scriptural proof. B, the real world experience. Amen. Ain't that the proof? Uh, and of course, Tulip said that Mike Winger seems like a cool cat, but he has a man-centered approach, a bottom-up, not a top-down approach. I mean, I can understand in terms of soteriology that probably being a case, but not in terms of apologetics. I don't know concerning that. Okay, so all right, so it seems we're out of that for the questions there. Gage Paragon, hello, hello. All right, so then we have and Jesse White. All right, so we'll get to that after this. All right, let's go to Jesse asks, what do you believe what happens after you die? I believe that depends on, if you believe in Christ, you go to heaven, and if you don't, then you'll be judged for your sins and you will go to hell. I think that's what will happen when we pass away. It's either one of those two. So, yeah. All right, so thank you for that one. All right, let's get to some of our questions here in the show, the Discord. We're going to try to save Engine for later because he sometimes will come in. And if he doesn't by the time we get around to it, then, we'll get to it. But Religious Fanboy asks, favorite superhero movie? Probably the Justice League movie that came out. I would. It's just one of those things that I enjoy. Wolves Are Cool asks, what are your biggest pet peeves? Obviously, one of my biggest pet peeves is when someone makes a claim about Christianity or anything like that and don't provide any sort of secondary or primary source material to confirm this, especially primary source material. I mean, I think that's a big pet peeve, is that they're going to make a claim, but they're not going to provide any evidence of it. So that would be one of my pet peeves with it. So Gage says, Paragon is a fun word to say, huh? Well, I mean, how you want to look at it, yeah, I guess so. It's kind of fun. So let's see here. All right. Let's see here. Tulip, and here's where Tulip is getting at it with teaching Reformed theology in the live chat. What I mean is, Tulip, is the depravity of man is all around us, watching the news and how the wicked love their own and just despise the godly. Yeah, but that's not total depravity, is it? What about the good guys, the policemen that go out there and save lives, the mothers who love their children, the young men helping the old? This is not hell. This is not comparable to hell. The whole thing about what total depravity is, if you actually look it up in a systematic theology book or look up any of what the original statements are of what we refer to as total depravity, it's not that man is completely sinful in his absolute condition. And in fact, in the notes for the documentary that I'm doing for the Pure Christianity film, one of them mentions the definition of, what is total depravity from the systematic theology book by philosopher and theologian John Frame, who was a student of Cornelius Van Til. So here is I'm going to screen share this quote and present to everyone. So here it is. That phrase catches the thrust of passages. The context is in reference to total depravity of passages such as Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. But it can be easily misunderstood to suggest that man is as bad as he can be. I'm going to have to definitely re-edit that one there. I think the essence of Scripture's teaching is better and best expressed in the words of Romans 8:8. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God. That is what is crucial. No matter how good a person may be by common grace, no matter how high is his degree of relative goodness, no matter how much he contributes to the well-being of society, no matter how little the degree of his sin or the extent of God's common grace to him, he will always fail in this respect. He cannot please God. So the issue of total depravity is not necessarily the issue about if everyone's fully bad. No, we agree that there are some people who do good things in this world. The issue is the mostly total depravity deals with the inability and such of man. And in fact, actually, as we go over this, there's a book that I got that is easily able to help explain some of this stuff, and that is a book from the late passed away theologian R.C. Sproul called What is Reformed Theology? And for those of you, there is a way to get this book for free, but it's an only one-time thing that you can get it. And it's called, and you go to Ligonier and you find a way to have it, that you could get it. And it's only a one-time thing that you can get, like part of the offers that they have. But you have to have done something like that with them, where you got something for free, for like signing up for a 3-month free trial with Table Talk and such. But it's called What is Reformed Theology? Understanding the Basics by R.C. Sproul. And in this, he of course explains Reformed theology in its essence, and especially not only the Protestant Puritans and the reformers like Luther and all them, but even goes on to the others. So let's see here. Humanity's radical corruption. This is the section that deals with total depravity. Total depravity is the first of Calvinism's famous 5 points. It is somewhat unfortunate that the doctrine is called total depravity because this name can be misleading. It has prevailed because it fits the familiar acrostic TULIP. Total depravity makes up the T of TULIP. The term is misleading because it suggests a moral condition of utter depravity. Utter depravity means a person is as wicked as he possibly can be. And then he goes on to say that the doctrine of total depravity, however, does not teach that man is as wicked as he could possibly be. For example, Adolf Hitler, who often serves as the paradigm of human evil, surely had some behavioral patterns that were not utterly base. Perhaps Hitler loved his mother and at times was even kind to her, a hypothesis that may not fit the likes of Nero. The term total depravity, as distinguished from utter depravity, refers to the effect of sin and the corruption on the whole person. To be totally depraved is to suffer from corruption that pervades the whole person. Sin affects every aspect of our being, the body, the soul, the mind, the will, and so forth. The total or whole person is corrupted by sin. No vestigial island of righteousness escapes the influence of the fall. Sin reaches into every aspect of our lives, finding no shelter of isolated virtue. And so hence he believes the more accurate rendering or understanding is to refer it as radical corruption. But of course, he said then that would not make sense for the acronym of TULIP at the council. But that's ultimately what total depravity is, as to what it refers to. So let's see. Gage, what's your favorite religion with a fictional novel game? Or within a fictional novel game. Okay. I really don't have any, to be honest. I don't really read as much, nor do I play video games as much, so I don't stay in tune for that. right. Me Liz. Does God love everyone or does God love everyone the same? Uh, no. There are some people that God hates, and there's some people that he has, put that hatred for. God hates sinners, wicked people, according to Psalms chapter 5, verse 5. Then there's obviously some people who go to hell that God would hate. Um, Hence, you have when it makes the analogy in Romans 9. Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. Um, there was a video that we actually did, or that we shared and made on the channel, where it talks about like when White Engine was in here about does God love everybody, and we had like all the different things that were going on in there, and he said, I was actually me talking to Kyle of Non Sequitur, and when we're just pointing out what the Bible says and saying that there are some people that God hates, um, that's when Engines just interrupts in and is like, no, God loves everybody. Um, and we try to go to the verses. Me and One Way Apologetics went to the verses to try to show no, that's not the case, because if you look in the scriptures themselves, they point out quite clearly that there's some people that God just that he doesn't love in the scriptures. And so we have to deal with some of those verses. So anyways, just pointing that out there. It doesn't say God loves every individual. So let's see. Gage Paragon, accept the Maker as your own and Andraste as your Savior. No, there's only one true Maker and Savior, and that is the Lord Jesus Christ. So, all right. What the? Huh. It seems like Sharpert Shenanigans made a new video. Gonna have to check that out later. All right. More news and insight from the furry community. All right. Let's go ahead and just head on back and dive right on back in. Let's see. First of all, Religious Fanboy, are you still there? I am going to take that as a no. So, darn it. I guess we're at problems. All right. What was I just about to say? Oh, yes, right. Anyways, Jay, do you have a question?
Yes. It's more of a question, something I've been thinking about and pondering on, and I wanted to know if this analogy would be correct. Okay. I try not to talk because I don't want to take over. This is your show, so I want to be able to, ask a question pretty quickly and you answer it in the time. Sure. So anyway, so we all know that the problem of evil, which we talked about briefly the other night, basically the problem of evil is, if we talk about God's omniscience, God knows, right, that we're going to create a bunch of evil. So I wanted to ask logically, right? If we use this logically, will the logic still be consistent? So my question is, would this be the proper check for consistency, right? So we have parents, right, who procreate, and they have children. Sometimes, if everything works out, they procreate, they have children. And they bring them into a world where there is going to be some form of suffering that they will experience one day, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, maybe not next month, but eventually when they're of age, they will experience some form of suffering. would it be proper by that logic of behind the problem of evil to encourage people to not have kids anymore? And so the reason why I bring up this analogy, and I'll just explain myself, because I feel like when we talk about at least one aspect of the problem of evil, it's about God's knowledge. And apparently we have knowledge here on earth. And so when I think about it, it's like, well, none of us asked to be here. You know, RC, you didn't ask to be here. I
Right.
didn't ask to be here. You know, so on and so forth. So is that a good lot? Like, is that a good way to check the consistency of the logic? If you catch my drift.
If people want to use the argument, well, that the world is suffering, and so, or that there's suffering and evil in the world, to some people, that especially when they say, well, you know, that's why they think that they should allow abortions to happen, is because, well, there's so much suffering in the world. Do you really want them to be brought up in a world like this? Well, if that's the case, just don't even have kids in general. If you want to be consistent completely there. Um, but then you have other things, where they'll because the thing is, this is only able to be done from the atheistic perspective. When you have the Christian, he shouldn't think like that, because number one, the Bible says, "Be fruitful and multiply." Number two, that in our sufferings that we have in this world as Christians, there's still joy that we can find, and hope that exists, and nothing that is, gonna be ceased due to this temporary suffering that we're dealing with, at the moment. Um, so if someone as an atheist wants to continuously say and promote abortion while at the same time saying, well, the reason why we're doing this is because, well, don't you know that the world is a bad place? You really want to bring up a child in a place where poverty and all this stuff is like, okay, if there's suffering in the world, that's your philosophy. You have the naturalistic, materialistic, atheistic worldview. Then why? Then don't even bother having kids at all, to the point of saying, yeah, just don't even have sex to reproduce. Make sure you wear a condom or get the tubes tied and snipped. Uh, do all that so that way when you have sex, there's nothing that's going to be done. There's no reproduction that comes out of it. You could then just engage yourself if you want to be consistent, but some people don't, and that's just crazy. And that's where I think that, either A, they just don't think about it, or two, deep down they want something to happen, but there's always influences that go on in the life, and that they know that things like abortion and such is wrong and immoral.
Exactly, and that's my thing. And just real quickly, like, and I agree. And that's why I bring that up. I think the only route to really go when you're answering that question is to say, well, no, it's two routes. You could say, well, I don't want to have kids anyway, so you're probably right. And that's fine. I'll accept that answer. But if you want to have kids, then I'm going to question your logic on why we have to question God on what he does. You see what I'm saying? Why can't God just do things because he wants to do it that way, even if you're completely aware of everything that's going on in the world? Because that's the you know, what are we gonna call what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is I don't mean to be taken literally, but what would we call it then? When it comes to parents, the problem of parenting, like, like what do you know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying, and I know it's a little bit different. I'm probably reaching, and I have to, come with a more organized, like concise description of what I'm trying to say with some research, but because obviously our knowledge is not God's knowledge, but as a Christian thinker here, but we do know a lot about this world, and we know that inherently our job as parents when we have kids is to make sure that they endure the least amount of suffering possible. You know what I mean? So that's why we make money. and we work for a living so we can take care of our family. And that ties in with what the Bible talks about too, because the Bible talks about you caring about your children, and raising a family. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. Thank you for answering the question.
Hey, no problem, man.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you for that. Religious fanboy, are you back?
Yeah.
All right, welcome back.
Hey, real quick. Hey, invite Pine Creek on. I wanna get him on here. Nah, never mind.
I don't even know if he's
he's in here. He's in the chat. Just look at it. Hey, Doug.
Where? Oh, there he is. Okay, I don't have his social media unless there's a. Oh, I'm getting an echo from you, religious.
Oh, sorry. I'll mute.
All right. Well, since you're on, just feel free to ask your question and then make sure to put yourself on mute.
Okay. Like last week, I did a Bible study on chapter 3. I had a question about verse 10.
Okay.
I was just kind of wondering how the word relented is defined in that context, because I was kind of confused by the phrasing of that word.
So what verse is this?
It's Jonah 3:10.
Okay. Let's see, Jonah 3:10. Been a while. I did a sermon on that. That's on the YouTube channel. Let's see. World. Okay, Jonah 3:10. You said 3:10?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's pull this up. And God saw their works, that they turned from their evil way, and God repented of the evil that he had said that he would do unto them, and he did it not. And I assume then by going to here, relented. Right. So the word that is used here is the term nakam, which, based on the Strongs, though we're going to go to the more full-on dictionaries that focuses on this. So let's see here. 5162 is the Strong's number. The word here simply means a change and such. So when we're dealing with this specific context here, remember that originally he's told Jonah he's going to judge the Ninevites for what their actions were. And as a result, let me see. Make sure I actually get this number right. All right. So he was going to judge the Ninevites for their actions that they committed. And so he said, unless you go to them and you tell them to repent of their sins and their ways and turn to God. And so, as we see earlier, what happens is that, he preaches to the Ninevites, saying, now Nineveh, so he's arose and went to Nineveh according to the word of the Lord. So he got there, he cried and said, yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. So he said, in 40 days, if you don't repent, you shall be overthrown. So they believed God and proclaimed a fast, put on a sackcloth from the greatest of them and the least of them. And so they followed through and they began repenting in the context. And then by the time we get to verse 9, it said, who can tell if God will turn and repent and turn away from his fierce anger that we perish not? Now, the issue being that not as in, well, God just changes his mind, but that the action is different than what was originally established, saying, okay, if you do this, where their fate is, or so to say that their fate is sealed and doomed. But that is if they do this. But if they repent, then that's where it shows that the other option doesn't happen, where instead it's the wrath of God, the anger of God is turned away. And so we see that verse 10 then answers and says, God saw their works, they turned from their evil ways, and then, of course, says, God repented of the evil that he had said that he would do unto them, and he did it not. So the word that is used there simply just means that, there's a change in which God does something here in the specific text. Now, let me see if I got this right here. Yeah, so Strong's 5162. Now, according to the Mounce's dictionary of expository dictionary of Old and New Testament words, he only gives a brief definition for an Old Testament usage, which is the word naham. He says that naham bears two distinct but related meanings in the Old Testament. Let me just get this off the screen. That naham, and I can't put this on the screen because this is on my iPhone. So naham bears two distinct but related meanings in the Old Testament: to comfort and console, and to relent, repent, change one's mind, be grieved. This verb is especially applied to God's changing his mind, in terms of that, okay, there's an action that's done, and God sort of has a different approach at how something's going to be done. And so, hold up. But yeah, ultimately that's what we're getting at with the gist of what's being described here in this passage.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, no problem. Okay. Pine Creek. I have a question. Can you imagine a world with just Yahweh in it? I can. If so, would you say any other world couldn't top that world with just Yahweh in it? If so, would you say any other world couldn't? I don't know what you mean by couldn't top that world. Is it couldn't be better? I mean, I think that with it being Yahweh in it, it could be better in terms of all kinds of things. But I mean, then again, same thing could apply to other contexts. So I don't know what you mean by it topping. And of course, the dialogue between Tulip and Destination continues to expand. The Protestant Calvinist versus the flaming Catholic. It's only a matter of time, folks, before something happens. All right, let's see here. Ooh. All right. Okay, where was I? Oh, for goodness sake, I keep losing myself every time. Oh, Pine says, would you say a world without sin is better than a world without sin? I would say that a world without sin is better than a world... wait a minute, hold up. Oh, say a world without... Okay, I think I understand what he was trying to say. I got lost there for a second, but like, well, kind of sounded kind of like a defeating statement, but yeah, that's where he corrected himself there. So a world without sin is better than a world with sin. I would say yes, that a world without sin would be better with. All right. Case, because I think he's got a Facebook. I'll try that, but let's see if anyone else has a question. Let's see. Nope. Okay. So, and we still haven't had the White Engine come in, so we'll go ahead and answer his... Oh! I forgot to turn off my medicine alarm. Ugh. I gotta switch over here to get my pills. Or my water for pills. Okay.
Yo, Pine
and now
Creek asked another question.
Yeah, I'll get to it later because we got to take one at a time and try to... And I just lost the wheel to this desk again. Plus, I also got to take my epilepsy meds. But we're going to answer White Engines real quick and then get back into here, and then we'll get to the live chat. But let's see. I see the Pine Creek Facebook page. I mean, if he wants to come in, I'll be more than happy to send him a link in here. First of all, let me take this. All right, I'm good to go and risk-free of having a seizure. So, all right. All right. So White Engine's question was, hold up. What's this? Oh, speaking of which, he just came in here. So I guess we get to just go with that in the back and forth then.
Hey.
So what's up, Engine?
Oh, it's been a heck. I've been doxxed.
So I've seen. Anyways, what's your question?
All right, let's see.
So now you got two of them that you asked, but you know, if you have one you want to go with first, then we'll do that.
Hey, Voltaire, you're here.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah. Shit hit the fan today.
It's all good. I've been checking in on Twitter, but I haven't. Like, I've been trying to take a break.
All right. So what's your question?
Okay, so the angel of the Lord was the pre-incarnate Christ, right? So
In the Old Testament, yes.
So how is it that the angel of the Lord appeared in Matthew 28, 2 through 4?
Right, let's go over that. So first of all, we have to realize that not every single time that the English translation renders something as that it means that it's going to be in reference to something that is, the same in the Old Testament. There are terms that are used that are different. Like we have the Satan language. I actually did studying on this. And we have the Hasatan language that carries over in the Old Testament that shows that that's not the name of the devil. The New Testament, however, seems to indicate a usage of that.
I like when Heiser was saying, like, are people going to call me the Mike?
Right. But the point being is that's only Old Testament rules that apply. For Hebrew, now Greek, now we can actually say that would be the name of the devil because it doesn't use the rules like that. And by using the Greek rules, it actually gives a formal name that is
the mother of all adversaries.
Right. And so going to the text here, we have, "Behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. And for fear of him, the keepers did shake and became as dead men." Now, what's interesting to note is we need to actually go to the next verse to get who this person is. "And the angel answered and said unto the women, Fear not ye, for I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified." So if you read the other Gospels, this isn't the angel of the Lord, but rather one of the angel of the Lord, the pre-incarnate Christ of the Old Testament, but rather is the just one of the angelic angels that appears at the tomb. And this is the time where in Matthew he's only mentioning this one, whereas the other Gospels mention there are multiple angels of the Lord. And the term of the angel is simply a messenger. And so this is just simply one of the messengers that was brought up. And according to what some people think, some people speculate, like Gil, for example, thinks that this is Gabriel, who may have been there, that's being the focus of the highlight, since the one angel that comes that is highlighted in some of the things is Gabriel, who brought the news of the conception of Christ to the Virgin and of his incarnation to the shepherds, and might be the same angel that strengthened him in the garden. So we have here nothing that refers to the angel of the Lord of the Old Testament, as in like these, like what you see in the one that wrestled with Joseph, or the one that ate with Abraham, or any of these others that, when you see angel of the Lord, and it obviously refers to someone that has a physical body that is pre-incarnate with them. It's instead just simply another angel, and not like Jesus. This is just a angelic being, probably Gabriel. But again, we don't know who the angelic being is, but we know it was just an angel.
But they normally name Gabriel when he appears, and Michael.
Right, that's why I'm saying that's a speculation. But all we do know is that it's just an angel based on what the account is and the other harmonies of the Gospels, that this is just another one of the angels that appears at the tomb whenever the women go to check.
All right, but also speaking on the Satan thing, don't you find it odd that the Hebrews just started recognizing, Satan itself, the mother of all adversaries, around the Hellenistic intertestamental period?
No,
You don't find that a bit odd?
no,
Because the Zoroastrians also
no.
believe that there is a god of light and a god of darkness.
Okay.
You didn't hear about this, like how the
I'm
Zoroastrians
familiar with it. Just like people try to say, well, Christianity borrowed from other religions. How so? Well, they believe in a God. So proof they borrowed. I mean, just because they share similarities in certain things doesn't mean they're always true.
I mean, around the time the Jews started talking about Satan as in the adversary,
Okay.
like Satan, Lucifer is not mentioned throughout the entire Old Testament except for the Nakash in Genesis, and pretty much left it at that.
Okay.
So don't you think God would want to warn its people about the cosmic evil force out there, and you better watch out for him?
They do, and that's why we see the issues of the adversaries and such, and uh, dark principalities and darkness that is mentioned in the Old Testament. And then, of course, we go on to the New Testament that is showing the continuation of this, but however uses New Testament language to utilize this.
So no one saw fit to mention them until Jesus.
They were mentioned, just not in the way that you want it.
Huh?
They were mentioned, just not in the way you want it.
What do you mean, the way that Jesus knew it?
Yeah, Jesus knew it, and Jesus expressed these evils.
But nobody thought of this before until
They did. They did. They just didn't say the same. They did. They didn't say it the same way that Jesus did, because it's a different time and a different culture and different words and different terms.
Okay, so throughout the entire Old Testament, Lucifer was only mentioned as the Nakash in Genesis, and that was it.
No, there's other mentions of the dark forces, and of the devil and his works elsewhere.
Wasn't the devil in a different league than the sons of God who rebelled?
Yeah, they were in a different league, but there's also theories that Satan was one of these sons of God and then fell. That's why the ESV, for example, puts it that that's possible that indeed the person who was there was Satan when he was still of the divine council, and that after this and a couple other things, that's what gets him eventually thrown out. That this was indeed the devil, but he was still in his rank as being part of the sons of God, being in the heavens.
So So he came first, and then eons later they came.
Say that again?
So he rebelled first, and then eons later others rebelled.
Well, not necessarily every individual sons of God.
No, then there's the sons of God that got allotted territory, but they rebelled also.
Okay.
Yeah. Just wondering if you found that weird. If that
No, as I stated plenty of times, no.
That Satan was mentioned throughout the New Testament, but only once in a brief moment in the entire Old Testament.
No, he's mentioned elsewhere, just not under the word the devil or Satan. Again, we don't need to just focus on limiting it by what you did earlier with angel of the Lord and just look for specific words and phrases, but
what was he mentioned
context. Huh?
Who was he mentioned under?
As far as the references, I haven't pulled up and memorized every single verse on that, but there's study on that shows that it's references like I shall fear no evil, walk through the valley of death, and the reason why it says I fear no evil is because there's the forces that are going to tempt and such that appear in these other things, and then there's evil spirits or such or things that will usually do that.
But it's not talking about the main enemy of God.
Not necessarily directly, but it can refer to it indirectly.
So, in other words, it has to be read into the text.
Based on context, just like we do with the Trinity, and just like what we do with the angel of the Lord being the pre-incarnate Christ, just like we do with anything with context and historical understanding.
Huh.
Yeah. All right. All right, so Pine Creek, I sent you the link to come in if you want. If you want in, so feel free to do so.
Oh yeah, how do I contact him?
Apparently, he has a Facebook.
Oh,
yeah. All right, so let's take a look at the. Well,
he's one of the good ones.
Okay, let's see. So no questions in the live chat so far. Just simply. We'll actually go into Pine Creek's one question that he had. Let's see here. So he did mention it before, right before, as we get into another one. So God chose something that isn't better by creating a world with sin. I said you asked me if for me what I say, not what God says. And so that's where I think the difference between the whole thing is, that I'm not necessarily going to be correct and right on all the things that I state. That there's obviously a purpose that still is mentioned that happens, and God still ordains that there's going to be something that occurs, and in the end, the world is going to be perfect, because whenever the second coming occurs and such, that's when we're going to have the world being without sin, and not a single tear would shed and such. So there's going to be that occurs in the future. So let's see here. All right, so let's see. Question. Okay. Oh, wait, hold up a second. Doug's in here. Okay. There we go. And then let's get to Ricky, who says, if God was almighty and can do everything and anything, then why don't he just kill the devil? And of course, he says, every time I ask this, I never get response. It's jokes. See how you legit can see my question. Okay, let's see. If God was almighty and can do everything and anything, then why not just kill the devil? Okay, so why let the devil live? Why let this happen? Okay, so God, of course, has the power to destroy the devil, and people have asked, why hasn't he? And the reason why is because God does as he wills and as he wants. And so apparently he doesn't want to just simply kill off the devil, nor has in the Bible been any intentions of doing so. So him allowing the devil to live, what we see with that is that sometimes he can use the means of what the devil does for a purpose and for a cause. For example, the temptation that occurred with Jesus, that was used by God and such to bring about a demonstration of showing, in what I would find to be a case of sola scriptura, and showing an exegetical understanding of the scriptures, where it's shown, they go back to the Old Testament and they're demonstrating this. And who does have a better understanding of the Word of God, and shows where it can be distorted, and then that gets carried on into the New Testament for us then to learn of it. So there's one understanding, but then there's also another case for, depending on if you do take the view that it's the devil that is in reference, if you want to view that he was the Son of God or one of the sons of God in the divine council in the book of Job, for example, that if that was him bringing that, then there's one thing that could be viewed about, that even amidst certain tragedies and such, that there's still be something that used to eventually show that, the power of faith in God, as well as that God is just and faithful to his people, as well as what we see. Great. As soon as I have to take a breath, all of a sudden I forgot the verse. Dang it, I hate it when that happens. It's just like you think about it for a second, and then all of a sudden it just goes away. Joshua.
Isn't the simpler answer is because God's sovereign?
Well, yeah, but I'm explaining because some people just don't like that answer.
That's too bad for them.
Right. But so, yeah, then you have the issue of, I believe it's Joshua. No, not Joshua. Joseph. Whenever he is sold into slavery, Genesis 50:20, he says that God uses that so that to bring about an end to a famine that would occur and help any surviving nations and such. So you have all that goes on. And so going back to the question about, this about the devil, why didn't he just kill him? Well, the reason why he don't just kill the devil is because, number one, he's sovereign and he doesn't want, he does as he wills. He chooses not to do so in this case. And secondly, to think for, trying to think about it again. And again, this is not me doing a joke. So I'm actually trying to respond to you. So I don't know how you're going to respond at that point. That's pretty much what we're seeing here.
Ricky's, I don't know if I'm allowed to barge in here, but
well, we're trying to make sure to limit it to just being between the people, or because we got to make sure to get as much questions as we can, because this is we only have about an hour left for the show, because I'm not doing so well today, and I'm gonna cut it down early so that way I can just get as much sleep as I can tonight. Okay. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question there, Ricky. All right, so since I think that's the only one, and it's still for the most part a challenge between Tulip and Destination in the live chat. I'm gonna just type this out. People, if you got questions, feel free to send them in the live chat.
I have a lot of questions, and mine's actually similar to Ricky's.
I know, and we'll get to you, but we got the way we're doing it here. I know you're new in the Ask RC Apologist thing, but the way we do it in here is a first come first serve basis. So
okay, you let me know when to go. Sure. I can't stay forever either. So
right, so we got Jay, Religious Fanboy, White Engine, and then you'll be up next. So let's go, Jay. You got a question?
Go ahead, skip forward.
Okay, then. All right, then we'll come back to you later. Fanboy, you there?
Yeah.
All right. So do you have a question?
Oh, sorry for
No. I was just asking if you had a question.
I have a question kind of for study or research purposes.
Okay.
I was looking at questions for actually a history exam I had this week. Okay. But it was talking about the fundamentalist roles in American history during the 1920s, their effects on politics and their stance on it at the time. I was wondering if there was any sources on church history of fundamentalists or stuff like that would be helpful in researching topics like that further and stuff.
And what topic is it?
Kind of fundamentalist Christian denominations and their effects on politics in church history and stuff like that.
Well, there's always church history books that exist. One of the recent ones that is being revised with more information that gets added onto it is the one by Bruce L. Shelley, which is being used in college classes to this day. Another one would be, and this is a free available online one, it's a Church History by Philip Schaff. It's a 8-volume work. It is considered his magnum opus. But as far as that's pretty much where it goes in terms of that. But in terms of if you want to look up the fundamentalists, I don't know about politics and such. but there's also the book that gets the term fundamentalist, which is called The Fundamentals. I don't know if that's the thing that's available free online, if you have to buy it, but that would be the one that you get. It's a multi-volume work that is called The Fundamentals.
Thanks. Sorry if there was any background noise.
No problem, man. Okay, White Engine, you're up.
All right, let's. If the Bible isn't inerrant, why wasn't Mark given the full ending the first time?
What do you mean, why wasn't he given the first ending?
The full ending the first time.
Again, what do you mean by given?
You know that in earlier manuscripts that Mark didn't have the complete ending that we have in our Bibles.
Right. I assume you're talking about Mark 16 verses 9 through 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interpolation that was added by another scribe.
So if the Bible is inerrant, then why the interpolations?
The Bible, as in are you familiar with the doctrine of inerrancy and what it claims?
Yeah, that the Bible's true and whatnot on everything it says. But
well, in terms of inerrant, as in what though?
Is the interpolation true though?
No, and it doesn't follow under inerrancy.
Okay, so the ending of Mark is not what happened, right?
The ending of Mark in terms of verses 9 through 20, no. In terms of what actually happened, it ends at verse 8.
It ends up okay, but the other gospels draw on that ending.
No, they don't draw on that ending. They focus on it from their perspective. That's why it's an eyewitness gospel according to them.
But they use Mark as a source, and Matthew and
Luke. Well, some borrow from it in terms of certain grammatical usages and such, but as far as other things, they're putting things from their own perspectives. And that's why Matthew 28 is showing accounts that are much different than Mark. Because there's some things that Mark and Matthew say that are in complete unison, but then Matthew, because you have Mark that's 16 chapters, Matthew's 28. Obviously, there's stuff in there that you're going to have that's not mentioned in Mark, that are, we go upon seeing new things. That's why you have, for example, biographies or autobiographies of certain events or things like that, where they'll mention new information that another author didn't bring up. And that's because it's bringing up from this eyewitness's account and source material. That's exclusive to them. And then, of course, if you want to get into that about borrowing, then you have the whole Q source, which we don't have a document of Q to know what Q is. So that's why it's only speculation at that point. So, I mean, I don't see where, the issue of Mark being given the full ending, I don't understand how that's being the question. I mean, what do you think that, Mark didn't write any of this of it? Like, this wasn't things that came to his mind in terms of that, or?
Like, if the ending of Mark was an interpolation, then how do we know that the others aren't?
Well, there are some that are.
How do we know the other endings aren't drawing on that interpolation, but giving their own interpretations of it?
Because we have the manuscript evidence. Like, if you look at the manuscripts for Mark chapter 16, the interpolations can be seen as a result of, okay, the earliest manuscripts lack this. Then it comes later on that we start seeing that Mark 16 verses 9 through 20 comes in. Some forms, it enters only ending at like verses 14 or 13 or something. Then others continue on to ending at actually 20. So there's different variations of the ending. That's why it's the longer, then there's the medium ending, and then there's the shorter ending. So you have 3 different variations of the ending of Mark based on textual manuscripts, and the longer ending is the latest in terms of the textual variants. But the earliest contains the shorter meaning.
I was going to ask you something that I forgot.
So to me, as a response to your question, no, I don't think that. I mean, he is given the full ending the first time, and that's the full ending of his gospel. But in terms of you're asking like the full thing of what goes on, he's just writing what he's given out, and for his purpose. And the way that Daniel Wallace, a New Testament scholar, points it, the reason why he ends it the way he does is he's trying to challenge his reader, saying, okay, picture yourself in the footsteps of the people at that time, and you're seeing Jesus and all this, and all that you're left with is that, you know, the tomb has been Jesus is not in the tomb, and the women, it just ends with the women fleeing. What would you do after have rating everything from chapter 1 through 16? What would you respond with as the Christian? And that's the whole purpose that Mark is trying to get at with his gospel for his intention.
Don't you find all these interpolations suspicious?
Well, for some of them, yeah, that's why we don't have them in some of our translations.
I mean, really suspicious. Like,
yeah, like I said, really suspicious.
Like the first cases of lying for Jesus and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm very familiar. I just said, yeah, there's some suspicious. That's why we don't have them in our translations.
Okay. Oh yeah, and damn, I forgot.
Don't worry, we can get back to you later for you to think about it. Make sure to write some of these down if you need to, though. All right,
Well, one
so
was going to okay, so if
well, hold on, we'll get to it. We'll get to that in a bit. We got to make, because Doug says that he's not going to be here too long, so we at least want to get to him to get his piece out. So, like I said, just write that down though, and we'll get to you. So, Doug, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. So sorry you're under the weather. But my question's building off Ricky's in a way, and I started it earlier when I asked, can you imagine a world with just Yahweh in it? And you said yes. And then I asked, is a world without sin better than a world with sin? And I think you said yes. So here's the question.
To me, yeah.
And I think you see the question coming a mile away. No,
I can't. I'm blind.
If Yahweh is already in a world, you know, with just himself before he created anything, and this world is without sin, it's probably the best possible world we can imagine. Why downgrade to a world that he knows will contain sin and evil and suffering? Why the downshift, do you think? What's your opinion?
I don't know. That's the thing I'll probably ask him whenever I die and go.
Yeah, but I think it's a good question to think about with the problem of evil, because
no, I agree. I mean, I would doubt that at all. But at the same time, I'm not going to lie and say that I know an answer that I obviously don't, knowing God's intentions of why he would just simply downgrade for that.
So you agree then, if God chose not to create, there would be no sin.
Right, because if there was a human being and such, like we have Adam and Eve, and then of course he established the laws to them, and they violate that law, thus what sin is, then obviously, yeah, then, you know, without them, there would be no sin.
And do you agree that if God chose not to create, that there'd be nobody in hell?
Correct.
And do you agree that God doesn't want people to go to hell?
I think that for some people that he says, you know, this is something he has a prescription towards, but as far as the decretive will, he does decree some people for hell.
Do you think God does desire some people to go to hell?
In the decretive sense, yes.
Okay. I just have one last question. And by the way, I appreciate your answers. To me, that's a very Calvinist type response, and it's very consistent. But it does kind of look and I think part of you at least will agree that it kind of makes your God look like a schmuck. But anyhow,
just some people it would sort of.
Yeah. My last question is there any claim in the New Testament that you think is probably false?
Well, in terms of not necessarily a claim, but it does teach on some ideas that the ancients had, and that is in Hebrews where it mentions that a man is in the semen in his father's testicles, in reference to when saying that, concerning the reference to Melchizedek, that he met Abraham and that he was and this person was in the
I said New Testament.
Yeah, that's New Testament.
Oh, I thought you said an Old Testament book. So there are
Hebrews.
Oh, Hebrews. So there are things that the New Testament purports to be true that you think is probably false?
Not necessarily that's purporting to be true. That's why I'm trying to state that it's talking
Okay, that's
about
what my
things like
question is,
theological
though.
messaging.
That is my question. Is,
Okay.
is there things that you
Okay.
believe that are in the New Testament that purports to be true that is probably false?
So, but like Bible teachings, then?
No, like just what people would view as facts. Do you think that there's
Okay.
something said in the Bible that at least sounds like it's just reporting a fact that you think is probably not a fact?
That it's trying to intend to be a fact?
Yeah.
No.
Like I can give you a couple examples, like the zombies coming out of the grave, the temple curtain.
Wouldn't be a zombie.
The temple curtain being ripped in two, the sun going off for 3 hours. You think that although it's written as like that's history, you believe that's all probably true?
So what do you mean the temple curtain being ripped?
The temple at Jesus's death, the temple curtain was ripped asunder in Matthew 27. I think. Like, do you believe that probably happened in the past?
Most likely, then, if that's what it's saying. But I'm not familiar with that particular passage. It's been a while since
it's in the same paragraph as the dead coming out of the graves. It's in the same paragraph as the sun going dark for 3 hours.
Right, which that has some historical accuracy with a few writings that were mentioned.
Which does the sun going off for 3 hours?
Yeah, I believe it was either Josephus that mentioned it, or it was one of the Roman writers.
Mentioned the sun being off for 3 hours? You sure?
Yeah, that mentions there was an eclipse and such, and that's what they referred to it.
Eclipses are 3 minutes in any given place.
Right, and they mentioned that it was different than the usual eclipses.
A 3-hour eclipse.
I don't think he specifies the time, but he said that it was definitely a longer one than usual, and a lot of people had different speculations of what could have caused it, depending on which of the different religions they'd adhered to. There was the Jews that had their thing, and then you had the pagans that had their other interpretation of what that meant.
So you think it's more probable that the sun went off for 3 hours in some type of super long eclipse than the Bible just being wrong about one thing?
Well, I mean, I think based upon if there is historical records that conform to it, then I would have to say that there's no reason to doubt in the historical records, if we're going to consider, at least in the supernatural worldview, that this one act is as a result of God intervening at that point to do something that's different than what we did naturally with eclipses and such.
Well, I would love to see Josephus talk about a 3-hour eclipse. If you find it, let me know.
Because I remember, I think it was in one of the things from Inspiring Philosophy, New Testament thing, is where I saw that there was a mentioned, but I can't think of a specific historian that mentions the event at the time. But
not all history, even history that is has primary, secondary, even tertiary sources.
Right.
Some history is wrong, correct?
Right. There are some histories that can be wrong and such, and that's why I think we need to look and examine certain things.
Is it reasonable to say that some things in the Bible are true and some things are false?
That some things in the Bible are true and some are false?
Yeah. Is that reasonable to say that?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier about the whole thing, that there was the idea that was going around about people believing there was a tiny human being in the semen. That is mentioned in Scripture, but it's not being taught as doctrine or being a didactic teaching of Scripture, but utilized.
No, I'm not talking about theology. I'm talking about history.
Right.
Do you think that is it reasonable to say that some things that's reported as history in the Bible is true, and in the same token, some things are false?
I'd say again.
Do you think that it's reasonable to say that some things as reported as history in the Bible, that some things are true, and yet some things may be false? Is that reasonable to say that?
In terms of history, no.
Why? Well, why is that not reasonable to say that?
Well, to me, it's based on just what I've seen and examining of the historical record and comparing it within the Gospels, as well as looking into the stuff from the scholars themselves.
Would you say that about any other book on this planet?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd say that there can some things that would be said if we examine them.
In other words, I'm asking, do you view the Bible as immune to any other historical document Like you could have a historical document that's like even 99.9% accurate, but you know, it's very reasonable to say, well, they could have got one fact wrong, but you're not willing to say that with the Bible.
Well, even to me, I wouldn't even say that about. I would say that same thing I'm saying about the Bible concerning certain other documents. So I mean, I haven't read obviously all the ancient documents out there, but I'm willing to say that there are probably some. While some may contain errors, there's also some that probably don't contain any errors. But again, I am not someone who's gone out and read every single ancient work. Like I haven't read the Gallic Wars by Julius Caesar, and so as a result, I can't comment on if there's actually any.
But you don't have to read all of history to just have a common sense view that humans make mistakes.
Right, and humans can make mistakes, but there's also times while having that idea that humans make mistakes, that just because we make mistakes doesn't mean that everything we write upon will contain an error. Then that would mean that there is some error in our science books or our history books we're having in our class, and I wouldn't say that.
True, I agree with you. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything human rights is false or true. But my question was one of reasonableness. Like, wouldn't it be reasonable to say, yeah, the Bible could have said something that claimed, you know, historically a historical claim that just got wrong? Mm-hmm. And I heard you say, no, you don't believe that.
Right.
And I asked why.
Mm-hmm. And I believe it's because, number one, that the Bible is inerrant. Secondly, that when I examine the Bible and then compare it to the historical data, as well as looking into the scholars on the matter, and note, not just simply the ones that side with me, but even looking at the critical ones that have tried offering explanations to debunk biblical inerrancy, as well as that the Bible, and say that the Bible does contain errors in certain things. When I look at some of these things, I don't see any problems or errors historically with what the Bible says, and indeed find something that conforms with the historical data and the historical record.
You don't see any errors. Like, I don't know how much longer you want me to talk. I can leave immediately if you want, because I know you maybe have other questions. But I would just point out that you probably talked to Muslims as well, and you've probably talked to Mormons. Yeah. I have. You know what?
Books.
The ones I've talked to, they don't see errors in their books either.
Right, and that's the thing that, you know, they would say the same thing, and then they're well entitled to that, and that's up for us to have a discussion on that, to point.
But shouldn't we, given that we've seen this, we've seen people not see errors in their own holy books, shouldn't we as truth seekers lower our confidence that maybe we're wrong?
Well, I mean, I think we can say that about certain things, but in terms of what I'm talking about is, I say, I started with, I could be wrong as I started my journey. And then after going through it and looking at the various things and continuously being proven right and right and right and right again, I mean, I think my confidence started off low, gets higher.
But you know as well as I do, Mormons say the same thing and Muslims say the same thing. They say, Doug, you know, I had doubts. I did the research, Doug, and the more I delved into the Quran, the more I was convinced that this is truly the word of Allah. Like, I disagree with them, you disagree with them, but
but the issues about the sources and actually go into the claims and such. So they'll say that.
And they say that too. Yeah, they'll do that too. They'll research.
And I say, let's go to the Quran, let's go to the sources, let's go to the historical data, and let's do an examination of this. And I mean, the only things that you mentioned were three things for the most part, and that is the issue of the sun, you know, being in an eclipse for about 3 hours, and then there was the curtain, and I forget what you said. Oh yeah, the third one you said was what you would identify as zombies, even though I would disagree that was.
The word doesn't matter. Just dead people came out of their graves.
Right, I would say dead people that are alive and not like decaying flesh and such, which would have been
like there's historians, Christian historians, who study this stuff for a living. They know way more than both of us combined.
Right.
And they don't believe that this is a fact of history. They don't believe these historical claims. They don't believe there were guards at the tomb in Matthew. Like, what are they missing? That, like, do you believe there were guards at the tomb in Matthew?
Yeah, I believe that there were guards at the tomb in Matthew, and just because a scholar says something doesn't automatically make it true. That would be an appeal to authority fallacy, which is something I've seen.
I'm not saying that it's true or not. What I'm saying is that there's guys, Christian guys and girls, who have looked at the evidence and even touched the documents, even know way more than you do, and they come to a different conclusion. What are they missing that you are not?
Well, they would also be differing and missing things that other scholars like Michael J. Kruger, Craig Blomberg, and various others have touched on.
But what are they missing than all those people? What do you think's going on?
Well, I think the main thing that would occur with some of these is a sort of starting presupposition that they have, as well as appealing to the modern, popular form of liberal scholarship that occurs in the field today, where it's pretty much about getting a new claim in and starting with that, and then trying to bring something new, which would sell some books, as well as get some talks that come in. So I think that's one thing that goes in. But the second thing that I also think happens is that some people are actually genuinely honest in looking into these discussions and looking at these, but they don't fully go into it consistently to do things like, harmonization, like we do with eyewitness accounts in, say, crime scenes and such like that, or trying to examine evidence from a critical and full laid out understanding on certain terms that are used, as well as the context that surrounds it and such. That's why you have people that, even Muslim scholars, that are doubtful about the existence of Muhammad, even though there is definitely a lot of evidence for his existence. But there are some people that try to put doubts on that, even in Muslim schools. And that's where we have to examine the sources themselves. And it's the scholars, they have their own ways of doing it. And there's obviously a bias that they may have, or preconceived notions, or whether it be...
as soon as I almost, my brain kind of turned off right after you said the word presupposition when you started your answer. And I agree with you. I think that's the difference. So anyhow, I'll let you go.
You turned off to that then, if you agree there.
Well, I think that's the issue. I think there's a lot at stake, and so if you're coming from the point of view that your starting point is that this is the Word of God, then where do you go from there? It's like it kind of hamstrings you from even questioning it.
Well, then not necessarily, because there are people who are critical scholars that start with that presupposition. Like I mentioned, Michael J. Kruger, Craig Blomberg, and several others that have, especially the people in the Evangelical Theological Society that publish papers on this, that are definitely taking in a lot of interesting comments and such. Even people like that believe that 2 Corinthians 4:4 refers to Yahweh and not the devil, as many people claim that the God of this world is in that verse. So there's a lot of things that are, like, say, out of this world and such that people are going to claim and make these days. But
yeah, I agree. But the thing is, like, in life, on matters that I'm not an expert in, when I hear the experts disagree violently on certain things, I think a good rule of thumb is to lower one's confidence in whether it's true or not. So,
I've done that before.
Pardon me?
As I said, I've done that before.
No, I'm saying you should do it now and tomorrow and the next day, because as a seeker of truth, you just don't say, "Oh, I'm done. I got the truth. I'm done." Because imagine a Mormon saying the same thing. Imagine a Muslim saying the same thing. No, I got the truth. I'm done. I don't have to look into it anymore.
We say the same thing about 2 + 2 = 4.
That is something. Now, that's a great example. If you ask what's 2 + 2 to a Muslim, to a Hindu, to a Mormon, to a Jew, to a Christian, you notice they all get the same answer? That's something we can have high confidence in, right? But now if you ask about the things we're talking about in the New Testament to a Jew, an Orthodox Jew, a Muslim, Hindu, you're going to get different answers.
Yeah.
And so I'm
your confidence then about 2 + 2 = 4 then.
Because what I just said, I think it's axiomatic, but I think the broader point is that when you have different biases coming to the same conclusion, that's maybe a better reason to be more confident than when you have, it seems like a certain branch of Christianity all believe that, and a certain branch of Mormonism all believe that. And all the outsiders can see it, but the insiders can't, and vice versa.
Okay. So, but there are some people that would probably disagree with 2 + 2 = 4, that are, we would both agree probably be crazy, but there are people that would say classically the answer they sometimes give would be 5.
Okay, let me ask you this. What are you more confident about? That 2 + 2 = 4, or that Jesus rose from the dead?
I'd say that I am equally confident in both of those things.
You are?
Yes.
Honestly?
Yes.
There is no doubt in your mind at all?
No. There used to be.
What overcame that doubt for you?
From looking at the historical records and the Gospels, that then, of course, we have those that predate the Gospels before they were written, and say the examples of the 1 Corinthians 15 passage.
Wait a minute. You were a doubting believer?
Yeah, I was a bit of a doubting type of believer, yeah.
And then you looked at the historical record, and then you became a convinced believer?
Yes.
Well, what made you a believer in the first place before you even looked at the documents?
The whole thing was about mostly, like, at first, a sort of name tag Christianity or default Christianity, where you just kind of have this phrase of you're brought up into it at a young age and such, and so you just have that name tag, but you don't really question it. You just really believe that a God exists and such, but you don't really understand or even know much about the theology or even read a Bible. I never read a Bible until I was like 19 or 20 years old. So
okay, I hear what you're saying, but as truth seekers, like, if I've talked personally to Muslims who have said, I was a Muslim, my parents were Muslim, and I really started to question it in my late teens, early 20s. And I did my research, and you know what, Doug? I came out convinced that Islam is true.
right.
Now, what's going on in that Muslim, do you think? What's happening within that Muslim?
Well, I can't say because I am not the Muslim. I don't have his mind or his abilities.
What's your opinion? What's your guess? What's happening? What happened to that Muslim? Why is it that when they were a Muslim, but they had doubts, and then they started doing research and became convinced? What do you think was going on there?
Mm-hmm. Well, my one would be a deception, that God gives them over to deception to believe in the false religion of Islam.
It doesn't even have to be deception. Couldn't it just be that they were seeking answers for what they already believed?
Yeah, they were seeking answers, and God decided to lead them towards the area where they would be deceived.
I don't know why you're jumping to deception right away. We don't even have to go that far. It's human nature to, like, if you're a Republican, it's human nature to view anything that Democrats say on a negative bias. If you're Democrat, vice versa. It's human nature to kind of confirm our bias, right? And so I would say that what's happening to that Muslim is it was confirmation bias.
Right.
And so, like,
theological perspective, because that's just who I am as a Christian.
Say that again. What?
I said I'm going to approach this from a theological perspective as an apologist when you ask me the question, because obviously I'm going to hold to what I believe, just like you hold to the notions that you have and what you affirm.
Well, I hope, I'm dogmatic on very few things. One of them is that the Earth is spherical shaped. Like, that's how, and that when I let go of this pen, it will drop. That's the things I'm dogmatic about. And on a lot of other things, I'm totally open to evidence, but I apportion my confidence to the level of evidence. But I don't see Muslims doing that, and I don't see Mormons doing that. And to be frank, I don't see you doing that. Mm-hmm. But I really have to go.
Okay.
But I enjoyed the civil conversation.
Hold on. How do I reach you?
Oh, I'm at Pine Creek on YouTube. You could the About tab. You can have my email, and then I have a Facebook page called Pine Creek Doug. Is it Pine Creek Doug or Pine Creek?
Yeah, it's Pine Creek Doug. I know the message on there.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to contact me and convert me to Christianity, feel free.
I know a guy you'll love to talk to.
Don't be so sure about that. I appreciate you, RC, tonight, because to be frank, I'm an impatient person, even though a lot of people call me patient. I like answers that are answered in 60 seconds or less, and it's really hard for me to, So unless this person is a non-bloviator, if he's a bloviator, I might not like this person.
Probably, if it's Max Colby, then I don't know about that.
Oh, Max Colby hates me.
He hates you.
Oh yeah, he about a year ago, I think on Twitter, he said, "Nobody do business with Pine Creek if you find out where he works or stuff like that." I'm self-employed, so it doesn't matter to me, and I immediately blocked him, and he subscribed to my YouTube
How'd it
channel.
come to that?
Because I just asked questions. I didn't make any claims. It was about, I think S.J. Thompson was there too. She can vouch for me. It was about women in the church, and I just pointed out, or I asked the question: do some Christians believe that it's appropriate to wear head coverings? and it was like, I think SJ said, no, that's silliness. And then I said, have you heard of the Hutterites? and or the Mennonites or the Amish? And well, those are not true Christians and so forth. And so and I think Max Colby viewed what I was saying as degrading to women or something. I don't know. But anyhow, he said some nasty things. And I said,
This he always gotten to that, but okay.
Yeah, this was about a year and a half ago or so. And so, yeah. But I don't have a high opinion of Max Colby after that.
All right.
Okay. Have a good night, gentlemen.
You too.
All right. So y'all discuss amongst yourselves for a bit because I got to use the restroom. It's been holding in for a while and I can't hold it. So y'all yourselves for. I'll be back in.
All right. What's up, guys?
Oh, JMD, guess what happened?
What?
I got doxxed today.
Oh, I can show 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2.
I can show you that 1 + 1 = 8. Okay.
Well, no, think about this. If you take 2 pieces of clay, if you got 1 and 1, if you put them together, you just get 1. That's a joke, by the way. Well, I wanted to tell Doug that and see if I could get him to doubt mathematics.
But yeah, basically, I've been doxxed and Red Pill is under fire.
Why?
Okay, it all started with some guy named Geek Room who hangs out with Non Sequitur Click. He's been on my ass for months because I said something months ago about, he takes something I said out of context to make me look like a racist. Like, I'm not, but.
And I'm back. All right. So since JMD came in after Doug's, that means he gets to be next. So, Jay, what's up and what's your question?
Wait, me or Jay?
Oh, I forgot. There's technically yet to JMD.
Geez, I think I forgot. Okay, here's a question. With the Trinity, do you just say it's doctrinal, or is there a way of reconciling one consciousness of God with 3 personalities of So would you just stay with a doctrinal thing with the Trinity in trying to explain 3 persons who are essentially 3 different consciousness and one being one ultimate consciousness?
I would say, it's doctrinal.
I don't think it's necessarily contradictory. I just think it's something really hard to wrap your mind around.
Right. I never claimed that it would have been contradictory. I just believe that it is something that's hard to wrap our mind around. That's where it's definitely doctrinal.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can show ways that it's not contradictory.
Right.
But I can't give I don't want to say mechanism, but there's no real way to describe how, if you assume it's a how process, which would have other implications for the nature of God, but interesting.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for your question there. Also, this is an interesting thing here. So, news headline today, folks. So Ben Shapiro absolutely destroyed this Denny's waitress with facts and logic after she rejected his expired coupon. So the story, folks, is that never try to argue with Ben Shapiro. This Denny's waitress learned the hard way this morning. Shapiro tried to order breakfast and used a 25% off certificate. But when the waitress informed him his coupon had expired 3 years ago, Shapiro fired right back with facts and logic, schooling the woman on her pathetic lack of knowledge on California's expiration laws. Shapiro rattled off literally thousands of obscure points, totally melting this snowflakes. Remember, we have to use these bold-faced things here when mentioning this. Tiny little brain. He even used big words like impetus and ideology, throwing her for a total loop. She could only stand there and hang her head in the shame as Shapiro made her question her entire existence. This sensitive little snowflake even ran off crying. Lol, sorry, honey, but facts don't care about your feelings. After her brain exploded, Shapiro continued his lecture on restaurants' systematic oppression of conservative males to several frightened patrons nearby, absolutely owning them with reason and cold hard truth. Way to go, Ben. So keep in mind, folks, to be careful if Ben Shapiro enters a restaurant and has a expired coupon, else apparently your brain literally explodes. So that's always interesting. All right, then. Back on.
What if Jordan Peterson went into an IHOP with an expired coupon?
I don't think that would even be a thing. I think he's just like, he would try to mostly go to like the Red Lobster and try to live with the lobsters in the tank.
Yeah. or an Olive Garden that's always next to a Red Lobster.
Oh yeah. So let's see here. And again, it's just back and forth between Tulip and Destination.
Yeah, you got to see that debate on Sentinel Apologetics after this.
Debate?
Yeah, that's happening right now.
Oh, that's not a debate. That's a discussion.
Well, there was a debate on the non sequitur. Those shitheads. It's Mike Winger against Apologia.
I saw that.
Oh, how would you like my question? Did you see that, RCA?
What?
I basically asked. I didn't ask, but I sent my question in through Steve. I basically asked. So if you had a because they're always asking what would convince you a Damascus, why can't I have a Damascus Road experience? And that's something Apologia has. I'm pretty sure mentioned in his videos. I could be wrong about that.
Right.
But I literally asked him that question. If you had a Damascus Road experience, would you assume it was a hallucination, or would you assume you were seeing the risen Christ? And he said hallucination. And to me, if you admit that, there's really no way to convince you. So I don't know why you're having this debate.
That's what Aaron Ross said. Like, if Jesus literally appeared in front of me, I just dismiss him as a hallucination.
Well, no, there would be more to it than that, according to what Aaron Ross has
None
said.
of these people are not in a position to change their minds.
Well, there's some that are. I mean,
oh yeah, definitely.
Hunter Bailey was definitely among one of them, and he's in the Sentinel Apologetics that is going on tonight.
Yeah. Well, Hunter Bailey.
Yeah. No. But yeah, the thing about great, I forgot.
Anyway, I sent you a vid of a girl you might want to talk to.
Well, let RCA finish. It's his show here.
So what happened? Aaron Ross stated that, if he was shown evidence that God does exist, and this is like something to say, no, he can't be, a myth or a fiction or anything like that. He would still not worship it, because he said that it's, even knowing it exists, he would say that the issue is that it's a disgusting, immoral monster, according to him. So it's not the issue of him doubting its existence. That's not the problem. He already revealed what the problem is in that answer. He knows God exists, but he hates the concept of God. He hates what God has done in the Bible and who God is. He hates God. That's the problem. It's the issue that he hates God, not that he doesn't know God.
No, he'll assert that there's no God.
He'll assert that as much as he wants, but he's just denying what he knows. So
I usually have to get what I'm saying out there, or else I'll forget short term.
Right. That's why I say make sure you have like a notepad or write something on the iPad or iPhone or anything to keep down as track. That's what I sometimes do if someone asks me a long question. So
like Doug.
let's see here. Huh?
Like Doug.
Well, not with Doug. He was more to the simple. Oh, yeah. Now I know what you meant. Yeah. Okay. I know you.
When he came on my channel, like literally, I wanted to end that stream at 10, and he kept me up for another two and a half hours.
Yeah. So let's go ahead. Apparently, I definitely see that there's still just going to be that debate going on in the chat, and nothing else has been going on through our Discord or our Twitter, Facebook, and such. So we're just going to go right ahead and get back in here because we only got about 9 minutes left. And then I'm going to go try to get some sleep and hope to God that I feel better tomorrow. All right. So let's take it right away. Back over to Jay.
All right. All right. I have a fun little philosophical question to ask you. It's not related to religion or anything. So,
I might suck then.
do you believe we all see the same colors? So, meaning, is your red my red?
I think for me and you probably, but obviously there's some people that don't, that they're colorblind and such. So obviously there's people that don't see the same kind of color that we're seeing.
So, for an example, is there a way to verify that we see the same exact colors though? Like, how do I know that like my red isn't actually red? Like, or not, like, okay, like if your color is red and I'm seeing red too, but what if you're actually seeing brown and not red, but we think that we're seeing, because we all been taught these things.
Right.
We've been taught that we see the same colors, but how will we verify it? You know what I mean?
Well, I think based on that, there's actually some things where they've done tests that they've like measured like the frequency and what kind of vision the eye would have, and especially what kind of colors it would pick up. Hence, we can know what kind of colorblind some people are, and thus determine what colors or variations they could see. And so I think that'd be one thing.
Yeah, I read that, and like, but that doesn't necessarily answer how we perceive them, though.
Well, yeah, it sort of begs the question if you think about it, Phil, like with knowledge at least. I think it has the hidden assumption that we all see the same color. So here's red, we can tell it's wave spectrum, but you still have to answer the question: how do you know that's red? I would say you can just use the simplest definition and just point at what we both think is red, and if we point at the same thing, then hope for the best.
Like,
yeah, that'd be my response to the question. That'd be all I really have to it.
RC, the point, I was just trying to prove a point, but RC, the thing was, it's not even that we need to know. It's just a fun question, and also, you could ask this to any like person who doesn't believe in a God, because it's really like a thought thing. If we really think through things, because sometimes we perceive stuff differently than others. You know what I'm saying? Even though it may seem evidential that this is the case, sometimes we don't really know, what's the truth or not. You know what I'm saying? And so it's more of a question of trust of knowledge. Like, should we really trust our knowledge in a sense? But that's it.
Okay. Well, we had a engine that was in here. I wonder what he was going to ask, because he usually has some interesting questions. Oh my goodness. Why didn't I do this? Hang on. We're solving the problem. I'm going to give him the link.
Hey, JMD, are you going to do another like chat for a little while, or are you going to get off? Or invite people to this one?
I mean, we can chat for a little while if you want.
Okay, cool.
Hold up. Okay.
Bless you.
Oh, that's not a bless. That sneeze. That's a cough. And it is not pretty. I hope the candy corn dog is watching or is still on, so that way he can get his butt in here. But yeah, I not feeling too well. So we're gonna have to wrap things up in a few. But anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, JMD. Now your turn, since two of our guys left.
Yeah, I've been going through Tactics by Greg Kokel, and we're at chapter 2. He argues that arguing is a virtue because that's how you develop truth better. I agree with him on that. But what do you think of his approach instead of trying to convert people, since it's ultimately is up to the Holy Spirit and so on?
Right.
In setting the stone in their shoe approach of getting them to think about things that they didn't have before.
Well, a bit of a spoiler alert. Part of the thing he says in the book is that it ultimately leads to conversion. So it's not necessarily that he's discouraging the concept of trying to entertain that, but rather that it's not simply the typical way you do it, like with evangelism and such. But rather, he's dealing with starting first with the putting the rock in the shoe. And I agree with that, which is why I think the best thing to counter with some of the things with like street epistemology, for example, is using tactics like what Greg Kokel mentions, because that's actually, if you look back what happened, that's what I did with Doug when he was in here earlier. I was utilizing the tactics by asking about the 2 plus 2 because he asked the questions and such, but then he's using this trying to be consistent with the standard of saying, well, why not just lower your confidence for everything you do and continue to lower it? Well, why have you done that with 2 plus 2 equals 4? And then I kept asking about it. It's like, well, wait a minute, but we have this, but why not continue lowering your confidence to seek it, even though you have discovered something? And so, we keep going to that route. And I note that even though I'll grant that it's probably because it was a little late, he was trying to avoid and say, getting away from it and say, gotta go and such at that point.
I do think I sort of employed I have my own set of questions, but I'm getting to the combo tactic now, even though I already know how that works and so on. But
have you seen the show, by the way, that's based off of?
I have not. I've heard of it. I think he talked about it. Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Especially, it was good with the one episode they had the Dr. Spock playing as the surgeon that basically tried to kill his patients through accidents. Like he was a murderer through accidental surgeries that occurred. So it gets some good tense stuff. But yeah, so was that all to the question of the issue about my thoughts on that part of the book?
Not necessarily the book, just the idea of it. I think another example is planting the seed, and he also uses we're all farmers in the same crop, or same garden, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Parable of the sower and the seed.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your question, and it's time to get over to and just because of this and well, first of all, let's just do the introduction because he's always usually marvelous whenever he does his introduction. It is the candy corn dog, which his day was a couple of days ago. You remember Halloween, that's based off of candy corn. It is the candy corn dog himself. It is Mr. Abe himself.
Hey, what's going on, everyone?
Doing pretty good.
It was Halloween, which was so much fun.
Oh, it was. Did you go out trick-or-treating?
No, I just walked around my neighborhood in fursuit,
You didn't scare any kids, did you?
No, they always love me.
Well, at least that's always good. I don't know why. As soon as I walk out the door and get to my car, kids always scream when they see me.
Oof.
I don't know. I guess I'm that ugly and terrifying. But anyways,
no.
Enough about me looking like Michael Myers on a Saturday morning. Let's get to we're gonna make an exception for you because we are actually about running out of time because I am a little. I don't know if you knew I am a little under the weather today.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm actually not really feeling too well either. I got a bit of a sinus thing going on.
I guess it's about that time of the year, folks. So get your medicine and start stockpiling up. So I'll tell you what, for you, I'll let you get with 3 or 4 questions in a row.
No, that's all right.
I insist. Don't make me come over there. Don't make me come over there. I insist.
Well, I only have one at the moment, so
Okay.
give me some time. But yeah, I was reading about these beings in the Quran called jinn. They're kind of like spirits, magical things. Most of them are evil, but some of them are not. I was wondering, in the Christian Bible, if any kind of beings like that exist, and why not, if they don't?
Okay, so you're asking about in comparison with like what the jinn are?
Yeah, like what are they exactly? I mean, are they just talking about demons, or is it something different?
Let's take a look at this. There's the website of Answering Islam, and they have the famous Islamic index of various terms and such to look into. So let me see. It depends on, of course, how they spell this, because there's 2 different ways, starting with a J, and then they're starting with the D, and then going with jinn. Okay, so here's what we have on the article. So jinn, unseen beings who, like humans, are given the power to choose between right and wrong. Surah 72 is Surat al-Jinn. See here for more on the origin of this word. See this article on the nature of the jinn. The most important of the jinn is Satan. Yes, so he's viewed as part of this jinn and such. They are created of fire, and these are the verses and such, as well as the hadith and such that mention it. They are created to worship God. They are driven away with stones. Compare with Jewish Talmud's Chakiga, or driving away with stones. You can compare that with the Jewish Talmud's Chakiga. The ritual of pelting stones into caves during the Hajj is a dramatization of this. They eat dungs and bones, according to Sahih Bukhari. Have 3 properties of angels and 3 of humans. So they supposedly have 3 distinct properties that are of angels, and then 3 of us humans. They hear the Quran. They help Solomon build the temple and the Quran. And then, of course, compare it again with the let me see, what was that? I think that's referring to the Talmud again. Iblis, Satan, would be one of them. They're in hell. Man command to seek refuge in Allah from the jinn. So that's definitely one thing they're to, avoid. Now, of course, at the same time, it says, of course, Muslims won't say this, but it says Muhammad was helped by jinn. And this is from Ahmed Bhagat's The Prophets of God, which is a biography of the different prophets of Islam. From Abdul Allah ibn Masud, which is one of the companions that Muhammad said, if you want to learn about the Quran, learn it from this guy. Muhammad made the messenger of God said, every one of you has a companion from angels and jinn, even the messenger of God, even me, but Allah has helped me, and my jinn companion became Muslim. Therefore, he only advises me to do good. So, according to him, he was even assisted by jinn, but also at the same time, he says that Allah helped him, and as a result, the jinn became Muslims. So, some sins will be forgiven by Muhammad. Okay. So I think then it goes on to its own thing. But yeah, it says that Satan is one of the jinn. And let's see if there's anything on the nature. So yeah, checking out this article on Answering Islam, the magical world of genies and dragons, mentions the jinn. Some people seem to be of the opinion that jinn are immaterial spirit beings, given the fact that fire is a chemical reaction between 2 different elements, and there is no fire without matter being present. Such a conclusion is not substantiated. At best, the above verses are inconclusive as to the nature of the jinn, since all fire needs matter that they may, on the contrary, be implying that jinns were created with material bodies of some kind. So ultimately what we just read about is that while there's, like the problem that, they're supposedly worshiping these beings, or that they worship God and such, there's also the error. Oh, and I got a stupid fly on my computer that you have, the fact that these things, while worshiping God, or that they're created to worship God, they are obviously they seem to be demons based on the description, and especially that one of these jinns is Satan himself in the Quran. So you have some
weird.
very
I didn't know that.
and now you know. And apparently now would make sense, since we believe Muhammad was based on a couple of the biographies that he was demon possessed. And here comes another thing from a later biography that people would rely on in terms of the biographies of the prophets of Islam. Here, Muhammad is said to have been from Ibn Masud, that he had assistance from jinn, of which seemed to have a sort of demonic nature.
Right.
So,
wow.
Yeah. Blows your mind, doesn't it?
Kind of spooky.
Well, I wish we would have said this during Halloween then.
Yeah.
Late night spook fest.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. That's all I got at the moment.
Well, this will probably then be the end of it then, because all we have in the live chat is Destination Y and Tulip going back and forth at each other on Calvinism, and I'm assuming they have to have mentioned Catholicism at some point, because that's what was
maybe. Yeah.
Huh? What was that?
I just said, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, my eyes. Yeah, all kind of itchy, scratchy. All right. Cartoon from Simpsons. Okay. So, yeah, this will be it then. If no one's got any questions. So, we're going to conclude for the night. And I'm going to get some sleep. Of course, before I do so, the one thing though, and I don't know, this is just me, folks, that people keep asking if I'm a furry. And it doesn't help the fact that apparently watching that Watership Down series after I've watched the movie, which, by the way, the movie is like pretty dark for something that was supposed to be for kids. By the way, folks, it's it's kind of messed up. But when it comes to the show, that's definitely miled down a bit, but it's still pretty good. Think like Lord of the Rings without swords and such. It's got its own fantasy fictional lore that goes on with it, and it was just brilliant. So yeah, it's a good thing, and I'm gonna try to watch a little bit of it before I go to bed. Help do something that kind of gets me tired and close my eyes. But yeah, folks, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully I'll be better Friday. We'll see. But yeah, just as a warning before I close, because I want to make sure that people, who are watching also, just in case because it ain't something to mess around with. If you don't feel sick, still get something. Get some meds that you like, seasonal allergies if you have any problems with those, and various others to, that way you don't have to go to the store sick and buy anything and have to stand by. So until then, folks, this has been RC Apologist. Take care.